showed no fright, and indeed no light. Damn it, the tin box was empty.
The journal refers to this empty tin box, and the only place that we have ever been able to find reference to that is in the Catherine Eddowes inquest papers.
The existence of the empty tin matchbox was not known prior to 1987, when the police inventory of Catherine Eddowes' possessions became publicly available for the first time. The diary had either been written after 1987, or it was almost certainly genuine.
My impression was of something that was not immediately genuine. I wasn't immediately convinced. If you're presented with an album that's intended for scraps, and you see pages torn out or cut out, then you immediately start asking questions about why that happened.
There is a potential explanation for why the first pages are missing from the journal. That could be the case that, for example, it started out as being his normal diary, or it started out maybe as being a travel journal of his own, and that his normal relations with his wife and with his children and so on, and with his business colleagues may have been recorded in there. But that as time goes on, as he discovers his wife's infidelity, he then starts to put down his feelings inside that journal. And instead of it becoming a record of his normal family life, his normal marital life, and his normal diary, it's rapidly become a piece of his psychopathology. It's now used as a way of venting his feelings. It's now used as a way of expressing his feelings. And it would be understandable that he wouldn't want the two parts to be together in the same place. So he might well remove the first part of the diary.
I've had a chance now to look at it at greater length. I've read all the forensic documentation and so on. My conclusion on the diary is that it could be of that date, of 1888-89, but it could also be later.
I mean, he just didn't go out and get a book and a bottle of Quink and sit down and write it.
And so that's the next question, the bottle of Quink. How easy would it be to get yourself a bottle of Quink that would pass the test?
If somebody was going to produce a forgery of a Victorian diary now, they'd have to have some awareness of the inks that were being used at that time. It wouldn't be impossible to reproduce the ink. You just need specialist knowledge. Inks of their nature dry out over time. It would be quite difficult to get hold of a Victorian ink, I feel, that is still usable. Initially, there was certainly nothing that I could see in it which would preclude the ink being of potentially Victorian date. But that begs a number of questions.
The British Museum confirmed that in their opinion the diary was Victorian. The ink had also survived the closer scrutiny. The hunt was on, and this time Jack the Ripper had disturbed 2 hornets' nests. Elizabeth Stride had been killed in Metropolitan Police territory, and now the City Police had discovered the body of Catherine Eddowes on their patch. All hell was about to break loose, and Jack needed to reach safety as soon as possible.
I have taken a small room in Middlesex Street. That in itself is a joke. It is indeed an ideal location.
Middlesex Street was the dividing line between the Metropolitan and the City Police forces. The diary made perfect sense. If it ever got too hot in Metropolitan territory, Maybrick had only a few yards to go to the comparative safety of the city, and vice versa. However, the following day the Evening News carried this story.
Belief is gaining ground that the murderer is not a frequenter of common lodging houses. He is supposed to make his home somewhere between Middlesex Street and Brick Lane.
Mitre Square was only a couple of 100 yards from Middlesex Street, and now 2 police forces were on the alert. Unless their quarry led them away, he could well find himself surrounded. It was now that Jack the Ripper crossed to the north into Goulston Street. In an archway leading to one of the tenements, he stopped to clean the weapon that he had used on Catherine Eddowes.
If his hideout is in Middlesex Street, he has to have passed it for some reason and dropped the apron. Well, I've heard all sorts of explanations of this.
Whoever dropped the apron in Goulston Street carried it from Mitre Square to Goulston Street, whether it was covered in blood and feces or whatever.
He had penetrated the woman's rectum. It was filthy, it was disgusting. Maybrick is not some sort of sewer rat.
I mean, yes, okay, it was a nasty, filthy rag, but I can't say that Maybrick wouldn't, I can't say what Maybrick would or would not have done, I think.
Having wiped his knife with a piece of her apron and thrown the cloth to the ground, her killer now did one of two things. He either left the scene, or he took a piece of chalk from his pocket and wrote a message which would become one of the most intriguing and enduring of puzzles. It read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." But was it written by the Whitechapel murderer? And if so, why was the word Jews spelt incorrectly? Apparently, James Maybrick knew the answer.
Very well. If they are to insist that I'm a Jew, then a Jew I shall be. I wonder if they enjoyed my funny Jewish joke.
There can be no doubt that the writer of the diary was taking credit for the graffiti, and yet, in the diary, he had spelt the plural of Jew correctly throughout. It didn't appear to make any sense, or did it? In a Scotland Yard report filed by Inspector Henry Moore in 1896, he had quoted the Goulston Street graffiti as having been undoubtedly written by the murderer. He continued by saying that the word Jews was spelt precisely as it had been originally. The solution, as far as the journal was concerned, had literally been staring us in the face the whole time. Did the word spell Jews or James?
A Jew they want me to be, so a Jew I will become. And then, as Martin has pointed out, James does convert into Jews on the wall.
To try and turn it into a James Maybrick message that way is to produce sheer raving nonsense, and anybody who holds it up as proof that the diary is genuine is going to be seen as barking mad.
I don't think the Jews making James on the wall is at all silly. On the contrary, I think it's just one more little piece of evidence.
A day after the murder of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, another little piece of evidence, written in the same hand as Dear Boss, was received by the Central News Agency.
I was not codding, dear old boss, when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Number one squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Had not time to get ears off for police. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper.
I don't take any of the Ripper letters seriously. I think that, again, one of the things which was fascinating and problematic about the document as one first saw it was the obvious claim that he wrote the Dear Boss letter.
I certainly don't believe that the Dear Boss letter was written by a journalist. I think it was written by Jack the Ripper.
Confirmation that the ears had not been cut off as promised in the earlier letter was just one detail that encouraged the police to believe that Dear Boss had been written by the murderer, so much so that facsimiles were circulated throughout the city. Research has also revealed that the postcard had been sent from the same district where the bloody knife that could have killed Stride was found, and at the same time. Further evidence was also coming to light as close examination of the diary uncovered links to other obscure references. They revealed an emerging pattern of clues. According to Assistant Commissioner Sir Melville Macnaughton, one of the first poems he had seen on joining Scotland Yard in 1889 read,
I'm not a butcher, I'm not a yid, nor yet a foreign skipper, but I'm your own light-hearted friend, yours truly, Jack the Ripper.
According to a 1937 source, this poem had been received 2 weeks before the Dear Boss letter. In the diary, James Maybrick thinks of his brother.
Michael would be proud of my funny little rhyme.
Recent research has also come across a hitherto unpublished letter sent to the Central News Agency on October the 5th. At this time in the diary, our author writes,
I shall send Central another.
I would say that if this is a forgery, then the number of coincidences are so tremendous that the man has really had incredible luck.